Here's what's coming up on The World Today. Missiles, explosions and destruction of Ukraine infrastructure as Russia launches a full-on invasion into the country. Plus, world leaders condemn Russia's actions and prepare strategies to stop its invasion. Thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos, where we're monitoring response from around the world on what's going on in Ukraine. It has been hours now since Russia invaded Ukraine, bombing targets across the country and destroying Ukrainian infrastructure. Ukraine says Russian President Vladimir Putin has launched a full-on invasion of the country.
Explosions rang out in the capital Kyiv and other cities as Russia invaded Ukraine. They came after Russia's President Vladimir Putin ordered a military operation into Ukraine's east. Russian forces fired missiles at several cities and landed troops on Ukraine's southern coast. Several Ukrainian civilians have been reportedly killed.
Телефонный разговор с президентом Российской Федерации.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has declared martial law. He has also called on citizens to fight and says weapons will be issued to everyone who wants them. Ukraine's allies have been quick to condemn Russia's actions and have vowed hard-hitting sanctions.
Today, in concert with our allies, we will agree a massive package of economic sanctions designed in time to hobble the Russian economy. And to that end, we must also collectively cease the dependence on Russian oil and gas that for too long has given Putin his grip on Western politics.
These sanctions are designed to take a heavy toll on the Kremlin's interests and their ability to finance war. And we know that millions of Russians do not want war. President Putin is trying to turn the clock back to the times of the Russian Empire. But in doing so, he is putting at risk the future of the Russian people. I call on Russia to immediately stop the violence and to withdraw its troops from Ukraine's territory. We will not let President Putin tear down the security architecture that has given Europe peace and stability over many decades. We will not allow President Putin to replace the rule of law by the rule of force and ruthlessness.
French President Emmanuel Macron says his country will respond without weakness to Russia's act of war against Ukraine, and Russia should expect tough sanctions that would hit its military, its economy, and its energy sector. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg says Russia has launched a cold-blooded, long-planned invasion.
This is a grave moment for the security of Europe. Russia's unjustified and unprovoked attack on Ukraine is putting countless innocent lives at risk. With air and missile attacks, ground forces and special forces from multiple directions, targeting military infrastructure and major urban centers. This is a deliberate, cold-blooded and long-planned invasion. Despite its litany of lies, denials and disinformation, the Kremlin's intentions are clear for the world to see. Russia's leaders bear full responsibility for their reckless actions and the lives lost.
Ukrainian state air traffic services has closed the country's airspace. Traffic jams have formed in the capital Kyiv as residents try to leave the city. Residents have also sought shelter in stations with queues forming for buses, cash points and petrol.
The VOA's Heather Murdoch joins us now. Heather, we understand you are in transit as we speak. You're moving through eastern Ukraine, just like hundreds of people who are also trying to get out of the region as a result of the attacks that have happened in Ukraine overnight and today. What has been happening in the last 24 hours? We seem to be having problems reaching Heather. As we mentioned, she is in transit. She was originally in Kiev, but is currently going through eastern Ukraine, possibly trying to find, a safe spot, to stay in. So right now, we understand Russian troops are just outside Kiev. They're around 15 to 20 miles outside, have been there since morning. Russian armored columns have made rapid progress south from the border with Belarus and north from the Crimean Peninsula. One Ukrainian parliamentarian says Ukraine is witnessing a nightmare and says the invasion is unfair. She says Ukraine needs the utmost support from all Western allies. They must come together to stand for Ukraine, not just with more robust sanctions, but also with military presence on the ground. Kiev's mayor, former heavyweight boxing champion Vasily Klitschko, says people were shocked to hear explosions in the city, and he's appealing for unity from the West to help Ukraine, saying it's our dream to build a modern democratic country and be part of the European family. U.S. Army veteran, now turned geopolitical analyst Adebayo Adeleke is in Texas. Adebayo, great to speak to you at this time. And if developments are changing, as we speak, we're getting updates on what's going on in Ukraine and what Russia is planning. What are you making of these attacks? And what do you think was President Putin's main goal? You already heard the NATO Secretary General saying that this was a deliberately planned, long-planned invasion that Russia had put together.
Absolutely, and I believe the NATO Secretary was right on spot, because regardless of all there are primary reasons and there are secondary reasons. But the primary reason is, as we know, that Mr. Putin has been fixated on getting back the old USSR back, and unfortunately, times have passed. But the reason, not to try to protect his natural gas, they're segregationists, there are people under genocide. It just doesn't make sense, because if you're trying to actually free people from a genocidal attack, you don't go in there gun blazing, and kind of a lot of frontal attacks, both from the east and the west, and also from the north as well. As you can see on the map, I was watching it this morning, Russian forces are pretty much all over. They've gotten Ukraine actually is quite surrounded. So the main reason for Mr. Putin is to reclaim Ukraine back. Actually, if you go back to February 21st, he gave a speech about that Ukraine actually belongs to Russia, that actually the Russians, they lay claim to Ukraine. And I think that in that particular speech, he gave a snapshot insight of what he's thinking. And I think if you got to go back, you understand the reason why Mr. Putin has a deliberate attack. This particular attack is a deliberate attack on liberal democracy. And to be honest with you, it's far-reaching. The consequences are so far-reaching on both ends, as you can see right. Has crashed. So you can see also a lot of market is responding globally about this. So we expect a lot of price hike in the midst of inflation as well. So on the receiving end, I think globally everybody's going to feel it, and at the same time too as well, I don't think the outcome Mr. Putin wants is what he's going to get. I think he's going to find out that there's going to be a united front from all democratically elected government globally, and they're going to push back against the authoritarian attack on a liberal democracy.
I don't know if you think that, Ukraine has been quite oblivious to what's been going on. I mean, they have been neighbors with Russia for this long. And up until yesterday, the president had been asking people to be calm, trying to get them to not to be afraid of what's going to happen, and also relying possibly on his Western partners. You think that they were just delusional about what Russia would be doing to them? I mean, now that the strikes have happened, we know that Russia did intend to invade Ukraine, but Ukraine's in preparations for this. You think they were enough?
I think that they weren't enough. I don't think, that's from my own opinion. I don't think Ukrainians know to the extent at which Mr. Putin is trying to stage this one, because initially we have a lot of skirmishes like this before. Crimea is part of it, and it hasn't gone too far. But again, this was well planned, and there's a lot of, I think the atmosphere is actually ripe for it as well. 2008, we saw one invasion. 2014, we saw another invasion. So this one is quite different, and I think he's trying his luck, and is trying to understand. Putin is not really straightforward. You think, he has a pattern of thinking, but you think you have it down and another card. And, his thinking pattern is not different from what has been of kind of what is synonymous to Russian leaders. As you can see, and even go far back as 1812, when Napoleon actually invaded Moscow, and actually Russians set the whole city on fire. He was even amazed, like, how can a whole group of people actually set their own city on fire? It just shows that Russians think differently from the way we think, from the way we look at things. So what we are seeing from Mr. Putin is not too far-fetched, but it's quite surprising that he's go this far. And Ukrainians, like everyone else, I don't think they were expecting him to go this far, but he actually went this far. And I think the result is not going to be what he was expecting. I think it's going to be quite resounding, the way people have been responding about this attack so far.
All eyes are turned to the U.S. right now for, what their reaction could be. Just yesterday, President Joe Biden announced sanctions on Russian oligarchs. It's supposed to cripple them and to cripple, their support for President Putin. What sort of strategy do you think the U.S. could conceivably employ right now to contain Russia without triggering an attempted, without preventing an all-out war in the region? Well, while following the Ukrainian crisis and this tension that has been building and which has resulted into an invasion of Ukraine, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres yesterday held a security meeting at the UN headquarters in New York. And he said the world was at a perilous time. Much earlier today, he did speak about what has recently happened in Ukraine.
This is the saddest moment in my tenure as Secretary General of the United Nations. I started this meeting of the Security Council addressing President Putin and telling him from the bottom of my heart, stop your troops from an offensive to Ukraine, give peace a chance, because too many people have already died. During the meeting, President Putin announced a special military operation in the Donbass and required the Ukrainian troops to lay down their arms. So in the present circumstances, I must change my appeal. And I must say, President Putin, in the name of humanity, bring your troops back to Russia. In the name of humanity, do not allow to start in Europe what could be the worst war since the beginning of the century.
We continue our monitoring of the situation in Ukraine as per Russia's invasion. The VOA's Heather Murdoch is in transit. Heather, I'm going to make this quick. First of all, what is the situation where you are, the internal reaction to the invasion in Ukraine today?
There's been a lot of chaos today from the morning. The bombs started around 5 o'clock. In cities and towns across the country, people have been leaving from their cities or towns, going to other places. It's not clear to anybody exactly where to go, where they'll be safe and protected for the next day or hours. There's been crowds of people around ATMs, gas stations, and pharmacies, grocery stores, especially in the morning, people trying to stock up to get into their homes to be safe in case there was another attack of bombs. And as far as we know, Russian forces have moved into lots of parts of Ukraine, including taking, or at least surrounding, Ukraine's second biggest city, Kharkiv, which is where we just left. And now we are on the road to Kyiv, which is still controlled by Ukraine. However, we are not sure how long that will last before there is another fight.
Yeah, indeed. Not sure how long that will last. We're hearing reports that there might be a Russian invasion of Ukraine, a takeover of government, actually, is what we're hearing. But what can you tell us about the feeling towards Russia this time by the Ukrainians, considering what has happened?
Well, Ukraine is a very diverse country in its opinion of this particular matter. You know, when we were in Kyiv last week, we found a lot of people who were very, very adamant that they would fight to the death against a Russian invasion. And they had stood up against Russian-backed leaders 8 years ago, and they were ready to stand up again. But then we also met people in the border who speak Russian, who have family on the other side of the border, and don't feel, or at least didn't express a very strong opinion about which side would be better for them if they won. So there is some diversity here. There is just a lot of fear of civilian deaths, injuries, or property losses if the violence continues as well.
Heather, wishing you all the best. Hope you find somewhere safe. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Back home in Nigeria, Foreign Minister Ojefo Nyama says the federal government is making plans to get Nigerians out of Ukraine following the attacks by Russia as it invaded the country. Just a while ago, he spoke to us about this, saying the federal government wants to adopt a highly tactical approach to ensuring the conflict does not become much bigger.
Our first priority is to the Nigerian citizens that find themselves in Ukraine at the moment. We've been engaging over the last 3 weeks with our embassy in the Ukraine, and I've been personally in touch with the ambassador on almost daily basis since then. And of course, the big challenge was whether to issue a travel advisory for all the Nigerian students and others living in Ukraine to leave. Now, an advisory was given that those who felt the need to leave should do so. The consensus amongst the diplomatic representation of the various countries in Ukraine was that the citizens should stay. Of course, Russia was asserting that they were not going to invade, while of course the US, as we know, and some other Western countries were saying that an invasion was imminent. So it was difficult to know who to really believe. The Ukrainian government was assuring the citizens there that they should just go about their normal business. And some Nigerian students who were interviewed, said that, to all intents and purposes, they were totally oblivious and unaware of any crisis. And it was just, when they turned on the news or whatever, that they heard that there might be there's some issues. So, so the advice from our mission was, not to panic. But importantly, a hotline was set up by the embassy and reaching out to all the Nigerians and, letting them know the number which they can call if they were in any kind of trouble. Now, of course, the attack, military action, is underway. I've been in touch with the ambassador today. He's, reassured me of the safety of the Nigerians in the Ukraine, and very importantly, that so far all the attacks have been against military installations, in the Ukraine. So, so that's the situation as of now. But of course, the airports are closed, and so I've told him that there are 5 airports. Inform the Nigerians who are still in the Ukraine that once the airports are reopened, that arrange in an organized fashion for those who feel that they want to leave to go to the nearest airports to them, and we will see then how we can assist for them to leave the country.
From Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Onyama, on Nigerians, the situation there in Ukraine and the plans to get them out of the country. I want to bring in former Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Ambassador Keshi, we've talked about this a number of times. The situation in Ukraine, how Nigerians should react. You have been in a similar situation before in Liberia. What are your thoughts as you're hearing what the minister is saying, that Nigerians should stay put, listen to, local news? The Nigerians in Ukraine were oblivious to what was going on. They had thought that everything was fine until they turned on the news this morning, and then they saw reports of the invasion, and then they should listen up for when the airports are open, and then before they make plans to leave. Your thoughts?
Well, from what the minister said, it is very clear that the situation on the ground is very challenging. For example, there's no way an aircraft can fly into Ukraine now. Even the Indian aircraft that was overflying the country has to change route and then flew back to India. It's a very challenging situation. There's nothing much the ministry can do. I think everybody just has to remain where they are, because there's no way the government can help at this point in time. Everybody has to remain where they are, and as the minister has advised, listen to information from the embassy, and I think it's going to take a long time, given what Putin is doing in Ukraine now, for anybody to be able to get out, for any plane to land and take out anybody. And they cannot go by road, because from all the reports we are getting, the roads are also congested.
Right. But shouldn't this advice have come perhaps a bit earlier? I know that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had, disseminated information. The hotlines that the minister is talking about, I do know them, and they were given to the Nigerian mission in Ukraine for people who might have concerns about the situation there. But then when the U.S. and other allied countries were calling for evacuations, you wonder why we said nothing back then?
Well, look, if you remember the last conversation we had, I shared with you our own experience in Sierra Leone, by the way, not Liberia. The point is that there are two things that are happening at the same time. Number one, as much as the embassy tries its best, to organize evacuation, very often Nigerians are not prepared to evacuate until the situation gets worse, as it is now in Kiev. That was the experience we had in Freetown, and that was the experience Nigerians had in Liberia. Everybody sits down hoping there'll be no war, waiting for the leaders of the world to resolve the problems. But very often, everybody gets caught up with this ugly situation. It's so unfortunate. And I have my sympathies for Nigerians who've been caught up in this crossfire in Ukraine.
So you're saying nothing can be done at the moment? They should stay where they are. What if they don't have... Yeah, but what if they don't have the means to be where they are? Can they find shelter at least in the Nigerian mission in Kyiv?
No, that's hoping. I must confess, I don't know where the mission is situated and how close, as long as it's not close to any military base, And look, nobody knows if the situation could deteriorate, overnight. As of yesterday, nobody knew that Putin was going to go, this far. So the best thing is to stay in touch with the mission. Hopefully itself, the mission will not be forced to evacuate, as we did.
So
when we face the same situation. It's a very ugly situation,
And for the U.S. right now, because all eyes are on them, to react to what has happened, can diplomacy still work in this instance?
I really feel very angry the way the West has, treated this matter, and also the way the Ukrainian authorities have handled the situation. In the first place, everybody anticipated. Well, some of us initially said Putin will not go this far. But the truth of the matter is that as the days went by, it was very clear, particularly after his very long, lengthy speech full of lies and the rest of it. The truth of the matter is that it became clear that he was going to attack. And I think the world should have moved to help Ukraine. It is too late now. I don't see how the sanctions they want to impose today will have any effect and compel Putin to withdraw by tomorrow, It's just too late. It's unfortunate that the world has allowed this to happen. Very, very unfortunate. I listened to all the statements being made by the world leaders in the land of my ancestors here. We just call it that they are speaking English. It is too late to help anybody to help Ukraine today.
Ambassador Keshi.
Because Putin has stepped in. But we just pray that the world unites and ensure that Putin eventually.
Ambassador Keshi, thank you again for sharing your thoughts on the issue. We continue here on Channels Television to monitor the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We'll bring you updates as soon as we get them. Thanks for watching.